There's a legend that's been whispered through the valleys and echoing off the cliffs of the Andes Mountains for generations. It's not some harmless bedtime story or a campfire tale to scare kids. Fuck no. This one's got teeth. Literally. A lot of folks say there's a creature up there in the high wild country, half man, half beast, and all nightmare. Locals call it the Ucumar. Basically, it's Argentina's Bigfoot, only meaner, louder, and even more real. It's not just something people used to believe in either. Ask the folks living near the mountains today, and plenty of them will tell you it's still out there, stalking the forests, screaming in the night, leaving massive prints in the mud that don't match any known animal. And yeah, it's not just the tracks, it's the howls. The kind of sound that makes your blood go cold. The kind of noise that sends farmers grabbing their rifles and locking their doors. People talk about livestock going missing. Not stolen, not wandered off, just fucking gone. Dragged into the jungle by something no one's willing to follow. Some say it's all just folklore, an old myth that refuses to die. But when the stories keep coming, when the fear in people's eyes is still that fresh, you have to wonder, is there really something in those mountains? Something wild? Something watching? Because if the Ucumar is real, we're not talking about a little campfire story anymore. We're talking about a goddamn predator. The Ucumar legend is ancient, like pre-colonial ancient. The earliest roots go all the way back to the indigenous peoples of the Andes, especially the Quechua. For them, the creature wasn't just a scary animal, it was something more primal, more spiritual. A guardian or predator, depending on who you ask. Some Quechua stories talk about hairy forest men who lived in the highlands and deep jungles, keeping to themselves until someone wandered too far into their territory. That's when people started going missing. Women and children were straight up kidnapped by these assholes and taken to their cave hidden in the forest. The Ucumar would move a huge stone in front of the entrance, blocking their escape. Then they, well, how can I say this so YouTube doesn't freak the fuck out? The Ucumar would then make the women have their babies. Y'all know what I mean. Even the name Ucumar is old. Some regions use Ucumari, which is actually the Quechua word for bear. That's not a coincidence either, because while the creature is often lumped in with Bigfoot and the Yeti, the Ucumar has its own vibe, something that combines an upright ape, a massive pissed-off bear, and a human. Descriptions vary a little depending on who's telling the story, but there's a general shape that pops up again and again. This thing's said to be around 6 to 7 feet tall. Broad chest with huge fucking arms and legs. Its body is covered in thick, matted hair, usually dark brown or black. That thing sounds like a hairy-ass linebacker. Its face is flat and ape-like, with deep, small eyes and a mouth full of sharp-ass teeth. And yeah, it walks on 2 legs like a person, but the way it moves, not human. More like a gorilla that's learned how to stalk. Ugh. there's also a nasty-ass smell. Multiple legends mention the damn thing reeking like rotting meat or a wet dog mixed with sour milk. Ugh! Like it's been living in a cave full of dead animals. Not exactly the kind of creature you want to run into alone in the woods, unless you're packing a half-dozen cans of Febreze. According to the locals, the Ucumar loves to munch on a plant called payo. It's a plant with an inside core similar to cabbage. This creature also emits a call which well-known cryptozoologist Ivan T. Sanderson said sounded nearly identical to the noises reported by Albert Ostman, who was held captive by a family of Sasquatch in 1924. And here's where shit gets even spookier. The Ucumar isn't confined to just one part of Argentina. Stories about it show up all across the Northwest: Salta, Yayui, Tucumán, and even spill into Bolivia and parts of Chile. Basically, anywhere the Andes cut through thick jungle or remote mountain villages, the Ucumar hangs out there. That kind of consistency across cultures and time periods is hard to brush off. Now, it's easy for people to lump the Ucumar in with the North American Bigfoot or the Himalayan Yeti. They're all part of the same hairy humanoid club. But the truth is, the Ucumar's got a personality all its own. It's not just a shy forest dweller or a gentle giant peeking out from behind the trees. The Ucumar's a whole different beast. For starters, it's way more aggressive. According to the lore, it doesn't run away when it sees people. If anything, it stands its ground. Sometimes even charges at you. Oh, fuck yeah. There are many accounts of people being dragged off into the jungle and never seen again. Some say it steals livestock. Others claim it steals children. That's a big fucking difference from your classic Sasquatch story, where the creature is mostly just minding its own business and avoiding people. The Ucumar seems like it wants to be seen. Or worse, it's hunting. And while the American Bigfoot is usually tied to deep forests and foggy woodlands, the Ucumar is just as at home in high mountain passes as it is in thick subtropical jungles. That range, from freezing peaks to humid, tangled vegetation, makes it even harder to pin down. It's a shapeshifter in terms of environment, if not in body. It's like it doesn't give a shit where it is as long as it's left alone or left something to stalk. Its legend extends to nearly all of South America: Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Venezuela, and Colombia. It has extreme strength and is very agile, as it can climb any tree, regardless of their height. It lives in hidden caves it chooses carefully because that's where it takes its victims. Bottom line, the Ucumar isn't just Argentina's version of Bigfoot. It's something older, meaner, and way more dangerous. A creature with deep cultural roots, a nasty attitude, and a habit of showing up in places where people shouldn't be. If the legends are true, and judging by how many still talk about it, they obviously are, then this fucker isn't some long-lost myth. It's a predator that never left. But legends are one thing. What happens when people start seeing the damn thing in real life? One of the first documented sightings of the Ucumar took place in May of 1958 when a group of campers in Ringo, 50 miles from Santiago, Chile, reported that they saw what they could only describe as an ape man. The cops were called to investigate. They took reports from the witnesses, one of which was Carlos Manuel Soto, who swore that he had seen an enormous man covered with hair in the Cordilleras, one of Santiago's 6 provinces. In 1956, geologist Audio L. Pitch found 17-inch long human-like footprints on the Argentina side of the Andes Mountains at a height of over 16,000 feet above sea level. The following year, similar tracks were discovered in the province of La Salta, Argentina. Not long after, residents of Tolor Grande informed newspaper reporters of a nightly chorus of what they described as eerie calls emanating from the nearby Curicuru Mountains. The vocalizations, which were attributed by the locals to a creature known as the ucumar-zupai, frightened the community for some time, and according to anthropologist Pablo Latapi Ortega, sightings of these giant fucking ape men continue to this very day in Argentina. The reports really started piling up in the 50s, and most of them pointed to one region in particular, Salta province in northwestern Argentina. Rugged, remote, and surrounded by thick-ass forests and jagged mountains, this area is where the Ucumar started making itself known. People weren't just passing down legends anymore. They were finding actual fucking signs. The most common? Huge footprints. Human-shaped, but way too large to be human. We're talking footprints that measured 17 inches, with clearly defined toes and deep heel impressions, as if whatever left them was seriously heavy. Several of these prints were found in soft soil near rivers and trails, and in some cases, people followed them for a distance only to have them abruptly stop. That detail came up several times. Tracks that kept stepping along and then simply ended mid-stride without explanation. One well-known example came from a group of locals near the town of San Ramon de la Nueva Oran. They said the tracks led into the brush, then suddenly just disappeared, like the creature had climbed up something or fucking vanished altogether. The tracks were documented in regional newspapers at the time, and while there were no photographs, the articles described the size and spacing in great detail. But it wasn't just footprints that had people spooked. It was the noises. Loud-ass howling screams that echoed through the valleys, especially on quiet nights. Several farmers described the sounds as high-pitched and almost human, but with an eerie, unnatural tone. In one report, a man said his dogs refused to go outside when the howls started. Yeah, because they fucking know. These weren't isolated stories either. Multiple residents from different towns around the region reported hearing the same kind of chilling cries, often followed by the sound of heavy footsteps in the brush. By the time the 1980s rolled around, the Ucumar legend had spread well beyond local whispers. A major livestock attack helped cement it in modern cryptid lore. This happened near Rosario de la Frontera, another town in Salta province. Villagers claimed that something had come through at night and killed several of their animals. What stood out was how the animals had died. Some were crushed, Others had deep puncture wounds, and a few were partially torn apart in ways that didn't line up with known predators in the area. One cow was found with a broken leg and what appeared to be claw marks across its flank. The next morning, villagers followed a trail of blood and found the same kind of massive footprints that had been reported decades earlier. The impressions led from the field into the edge of the forest. One man said he saw a large, dark fucker moving between the trees just before sunrise. No photos were taken, but the event was covered by local news at the time, and it reignited interest in the Ucumar across the region. After that, sightings went through the goddamn roof, and not just from isolated villages. Farmers working in the foothills started reporting brief encounters with a tall, hairy figure watching them from a distance. It was described as something moving on two legs, covered in dark hair, with a wide frame and huge arms. Some folks even reported that it followed them through the trees for a short time before disappearing. Yeah, fuck that shit. One well-known report came from a truck driver near Cafajate, a town located in a more arid part of Salta. He said that something crossed the road in front of him late at night, upright, fast, and enormous. He described it as running on two legs and said it covered the road in just a couple of strides before vanishing into the darkness. He later told a local paper he'd never seen anything like that shit before, and he refused to drive that stretch of highway again after dark. The sightings didn't stop there. In the 2010s, a small group of hikers near the border of Salta and Jujuy provinces reported hearing what they described as guttural howls around their campsite at night. They were deep in the forest with no other campers or known animals in the area. One of them said the sounds circled their tents for nearly an hour, but they never saw the source. A few trees were found broken the next morning, about 10 feet up, snapped as if something large had fucking bulldozed its way through the area. In 2017, another report came from a family traveling near the Yungas region, a dense forest area that transitions between the Andes and the lowland jungle. They saw a tall, hairy figure crouched down behind a tree off the side of the road. It was probably taking a shit. When they stopped the car, it stood upright and quickly moved out of sight. The driver described the figure as massive, taller than the car, with a broad chest and long arms. No photos were taken, but the family gave a statement to local authorities, who filed it away as a standard wildlife encounter, because, of course they did. Oddly though, in the report, they never specified what kind of animal it was. And as recently as 2021, biology students working in the Calahuiga National Park region, one of the largest protected areas in Argentina, described hearing what they called unidentified primate-like vocalizations while conducting fieldwork. They were unable to determine the source of the sounds, but noted that it did not match any known species in the area. Their experience wasn't initially made public, but one of the students later discussed it anonymously on a cryptid research podcast, saying the howls gave them chills and felt out of place, even for the jungle. Every few years, a new report pops up. Sometimes it's just a noise. Sometimes a glimpse of movement in the brush. The sightings stretch across decades and come from different people in different regions, many of whom have no fucking connection to one another. And while there's still no physical proof, no photos, no bones, no definitive evidence, the number of accounts can't be ignored. Some folks say it's all just a bunch of bullshit. Others aren't so sure. But whatever people are seeing, whatever is leaving those massive footprints, scaring livestock and creeping through the trees, it hasn't gone away. If anything, the reports are getting more fucky. And that leaves one huge ass question. What could the Ucumar actually be? Let's talk about what this goddamn thing might actually be. First off, the skeptical angle. The most common explanation you'll hear is that people are just seeing bears. Specifically, the spectacled bear, aka the eyeglass bear. Hell, it's the only bear species native to South America. They live in and around the Andes, and they can get pretty goddamn big, especially when standing on their hind legs. Some skeptics suggest that from a distance, in low light, a large bear moving upright through thick jungle might easily be mistaken for something more mysterious. Add in a little fear, a shot of adrenaline, and suddenly it becomes a giant ape man stalking through the trees, ready to eat your ass. That theory explains a few things: the size, the shape, and, for a few steps, the movements. But it misses big on a couple of things. First, the strange noises this thing belts out. Check this out. Spectacle bears can't make those noises, not even under stress. On top of that, spectacled bears aren't aggressive towards humans. They're chicken shit, mostly vegetarian, and tend to avoid people at all costs. Now, they will defend themselves if cornered, but otherwise, they're pretty chill bears. Besides, a lot of eyewitnesses say that what they saw didn't look anything like a fucking bear. Some even say it looked closer to a gorilla with a human face, or a man covered in hair. That leads to another hypothesis. Maybe we're dealing with a species of undiscovered primate. Believers often point to this as the most logical explanation. Something that's not a bear, not a myth, not an ape or gorilla, but a real biological creature that's remained mostly hidden in the Andes Mountains. Some think it could be a descendant of an ancient ape species, like Gigantopithecus, that somehow migrated or evolved in isolation in South America. Others think it might be a completely unknown branch of primate, possibly even something closer to early humans. And unlike North America, where Bigfoot sightings usually get fucked off, people in the Andes have taken the Ucumar legend dead serious for generations. Local cultures never treated it like some horseshit fairy tale. It was something real, something dangerous, something to be warned about, and something not to fuck with. That's not usually how folks treat simple folklore. Now, skeptics will say it's all just mass hysteria. The idea is that once a story gets stuck in a community, like a big hairy forest monster, people start to see it everywhere. The brain fills in gaps when it doesn't have clear information. You hear something scream in the woods, and your mind goes straight to the legend. That's how pareidolia works. We see faces in clouds and creatures in shadows. And if enough people start talking about it, suddenly the legend starts feeding itself. But here's where the believers push back hard. There's been way too many sightings, way too many details lining up, and way too much history behind it to be some shared bad acid trip hallucination. From the pre-Columbian Quechua stories to modern-day villagers describing the same exact creature, the pattern is hard to ignore. Believers argue that there's simply too much consistency across time and culture for the whole fucking thing to be a coincidence. And they have their own explanations. Some say the Ucumar is a flesh and blood creature, an unclassified primate or hominid that's just really good at staying hidden. Others think it's a relic from a lost time, maybe even a survivor from a species we thought died out long ago. A few go even further and suggest that it might be something supernatural or interdimensional, especially when it comes to the creature's tracks suddenly stopping mid-stride. But among believers, the most common theory is that this thing is real, physical, and just hasn't been captured or studied yet. Bottom line, skeptics say there's no physical proof, but believers, they've got decades of stories, tracks, and a very consistent legend that refuses to fade. And that leaves us with one final question. What the hell is the Ucumar? The Ucumar isn't some forgotten myth buried in dusty-ass folklore books. It's a living legend, still whispered about in remote mountain towns and passed down like a warning from one generation to the next. You'll hear it from old men in bars in Salta, from hikers who swear they weren't alone in the jungle, from families who lock their doors tight when the howls start echoing through the valley. This thing has fucking stuck, not just because it's scary, but because people keep running across it repeatedly. And that's the wild part. We're not talking about some ancient myth from 300 years ago. The sightings have never stopped. Every few years, a new story hits the news. A farmer finds his animals torn apart. A hiker snaps a blurry photo of something big ducking into the trees. A group of locals hear a scream that doesn't sound like anything they've ever heard before. The Ucumar isn't going away, no matter how hard the skeptics try to laugh it off. So, if it's not real, why does it keep showing up? It's pretty easy to explain away a few reports. You can blame it on bears or fear or the power of a good story. But when the same kind of creature keeps popping up over decades, hell, centuries, and across dozens of different towns and witnesses, maybe you have to ask yourself, is there something we're not seeing? Or worse, something we are seeing but refusing to believe? If you vibed with this video, tap that like button and subscribe. That way you won't miss out on more of my fucked up commentary. And besides, I really do appreciate it. Dude, the Ucumar is a trip. Do you think it's a misidentified animal? A creepy campfire tale? Or is it a relative of Bigfoot? Let me know down in the comments. And if you really want to do me a solid, click on that join button below the title and become part of my YouTube membership. For as little as $2.99, y'all can help me out more than you know. Until next time, y'all keep it real, keep it chill, and stay creepy! Catch you on the flip. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You are the real beast.